skinning and hair. We worked on putting all the lines on the dogs. And one of the reasons we did heads and fronts and rears first and then did coats is because what happens is you have to put the lines on the dogs to follow the structure, and then the back jacket is what comes naturally blending into all those lines. The standard says that they're supposed to have a nice tight jacket that's close to the skin, about 2 inches in length. Well, on a Scotty, if you have a 2-inch coat, it's a little bit too long. But what happens is a Scotty is a double-coated breed. There's the soft fuzz that makes your dust balls in the corner, and then there's the harsh, wiry coat. And what happened is we have to strip a dog and take those hairs out and induce the shedding, because a Scotty's coat will only grow to a certain length and then it'll stop growing. It just hangs dead in the hair follicle. And what happens is you think, well, wouldn't it be neat if one day I grew my dog's coat as long as a Maltese and had it dragging on the floor? But it doesn't. It will only grow to about 6 inches in length and then just hang there. Because what happened in nature, and when this dog was bred as a working hunting dog, they ran through the moors of Scotland, and they were going through thistle and heather and rocks, and nature itself stripped the dog. It would catch on the brush, and it would lead and hang on the brush, and new coat would then come in. So what happened is nature put its own hard shell to protect it from the sticks and the sharp thistle. And also, the harsh coat protects it from water. It becomes waterproof. If you think about how many times the Scotty gets water on their back and it just beads right off, or how many times they get wet, and if you don't rub that water in, the water just continually sort of rubs right off the dog's coat. And that's because nature was giving it a hard protective shell due to their type of environment that they were working in. So what we've got to do, it's called induced shedding, and that is what is stripping. So what you're doing basically is finding the longest hairs and pulling them out. It's not going to stay there, is it? You've got several different tools that you're able to use to do that. First and primary are your fingers. Every other tool that you use basically emulates and enhances the picking that you do with your fingers. If you use a stone to make it go faster, or a knife to get a lot of hair out. And basically what you're doing is you're taking your fingertip and your thumb and you're pushing the long hairs up with your thumb, and you're like with the chopstick coming down with your index finger on the tight like this and catching the longest hairs. You don't try to go side motion, because I'm getting nothing when I use my whole side of my hand. It's literally taking the coat and picking it like you just want to get that one hair. You know when your Scotty's laying on your lap and you got that one strangly white hair and you pick it all out and then you go with that white hair and you just pick it out like that. And that's what you're doing. So when you pick up a stone, basically that's what it's doing for you. You hold it tight in your hands and you lift up with your thumb and you pick, just like that. You find the long hairs. Also, you can use a knife to do your stripping. Knives are very difficult because you can cut a coat with a knife very easily. But what does that mean? Well, when you strip a dog, you take out the entire hair follicle along with the shank of hair, the shaft of hair. What happens with cutting a coat with a knife is sometimes if our technique's not down just right, what we'll do is we'll come and if you look here, you catch the hair on the knife part, and if you twist it, it literally just cuts it right off like a pair of thinning shears. So if you use a knife, you have to go through the whole motion, backward motion, and make sure and double check that did I pull the piece of hair follicle out? Is there a little white thing on the end? And that way you know you've got the whole strip. Now that's your stripping. So basically, that's the concept of stripping. There are lines that you have to use. Again, the same concept with doing all the other front work, the head and the rear. A dog has a furnishing line. And a furnishing line is where your harsh coat meets your long coat on the floor. This hair is a little bit different texture and mixture than the hair on the back of the coat. And this hair does tend to grow long, and it does drag on the floor. But to make that happen requires a lot of conditioning and a lot of brushing, which we'll get into in a minute. So basically what you're doing is to create a furnishing line is you comb it all out, and what you're doing is you're coming down from behind the ear, and you come down the front of the shoulder blade, across the shoulder blade, across the top of the elbow, that shelf there. And that's where the front of the furnishing line goes. Now, to the back, a furnishing line does not go like a Cocker Spaniel like this, where you get your one strip down the middle and then everything else is skirt. So what happens here is this is, again, a natural blend. It just sort of progresses from a short coat down to a long coat that covers the legs and covers the light through the underneath carriage. What I do is I come under and I put my hand here and I take my arm and I put my elbow sort of on the top of the hip here, and that's my line. And anything that's above this line has to be taken off. And sometimes on a dog that's got too high of a furnishing line, what happens when you do that, you see skirt that hangs out over here. You know, sometimes it's real long, and you're going to what's called lower your line. Now, what happens if your line is high? Well, does it really matter? Well, yes, it does, because if you think about it, a dog is supposed to be low to the ground. If the furnishing line starts up here, look, we've just added, if you can imagine, we've just added 2 inches of height to this dog. So we want a nice low furnishing line that's natural, because the hair moves with the dog. If you see hair move when the dog moves, then it's too long, because this is just, it's an illusion that there's a lot of hair. Again, it just sort of fits where the body parts are. So what I'll do to strip a dog is there's a bunch of different areas, and different areas in a way sort of require different lengths. And what happens, you can't have that. I need that. What happens is you want those shoulder blades really short. Where you come to the point of the withers here is a little bit longer. And the reason that is because you want that nice sloping line, as the diagram says, that comes off the shoulder and graduates right into a level top line. A level top line is flat. It's like you could put a book on it. A dipping top line is when the dog sags in the middle. A roached top line is when the dog roaches its back. Also, if you have a dog that tends to be high in the rear, meaning its rear legs are taller than its front legs, you can put your furnishing line and you can groom a furnishing line so that you could bring it way down here so that the dog doesn't quite perceive that the rear legs are higher. But very conversely, you could have a level top line, and because you've got such an angle on your furnishing line, it could perceive that you have a high rear. So how do you get the coat out? Well, as I said, there's stripping. Basically, you're going to take, and where the hair is long, you're going to strip it out with your fingers. That's basically what you're doing. Now, you also have to get the fuzz out, and that's where you use the rake. Now, the way you use the rake is you lay the knife flat on the dog. Come on, sweetheart. You lay the knife flat and you pull directly back. And the fuzz that you get, it's not shiny. If you look at the shiny coat versus that, it's not. That's fuzz. That's undercoat. That's your double coat. This is actually the insulation that the dogs needed to live in Scotland. So you want to get all that fuzz out. Now you have to lay the knife flat, and a lot of us don't pay attention to how we hold it. But it's really important because, again, as I showed you earlier, if you drag it across your hand, there's nothing. You drag it across your hand, you scrape the skin. You cannot hold the knife, you have to hold it flat. So basically, you're going to start from the top, lay that knife flat. You're going to put a little muscle power behind the point here, and you're going to come straight across, and you're going to defuzz, as we say, this dog. We're going to get all that fuzz out, see? It's just dead. It's just dead. Now, if your dog's been clippered, you're going to have more fuzz than a dog that's been stripped. Because, again, for every hair that's pulled out, including whether it's undercoat or harsh coat, a new hair is going to grow in its place. And the fewer hairs that you take out, the more fuzz that grows in. You really have to remove the fuzz to actually even get the harsh coat. So if your dog's been clippered, basically what you need to do is the rake is going to be your main tool. You're going to do more raking than you are stripping because most probably it's going to be pretty tight to the skin anyway. And as that coat starts growing in length, you're going to use your rake and you're going to defuzz it so that you can start a new coat growing in. And then as it gets longer and you can actually grab onto something, then you can do some stripping. But if you've just got a real tight coat, like, when we had these necks and rears and stuff, there's not much to grab onto. So the rake is going to be your best friend. But you just bring that right back. And again, stripping, you have to pull the hair out in the direction that you want it to grow. What happens is when you take out the hair follicle is twisted. And the direction that the hair comes out is the direction that the new hair comes in. A Scotty's coat goes in this direction, from front to back. So you want the hair laying in a front to back pattern. You do not want it going down, because what happens when it goes down, you get a sort of a blunt look. You don't get that long, sleek look that you want to have. So you really do need to put that behind to your chest and pull straight back. And again, that's with stripping or raking, because again, there's a good chance when you rake out fuzz that a nice harsh hair is going to grow in its place. And you just do this all over. Now, a lot of us just do the back because we think, well, that's where we want the harsh hair. And we fall into this mindset of, well, we need the furnishings to be long, especially if we don't have a lot of furnishings right now. Or sometimes we have furnishings that are so wild and woolly that we're not really sure what we're supposed to do with them. But believe it or not, furnishings have to be raked too, because even though they seem soft and silky, they're also double coated too. So you're going to pull the leg back, and you're going to come from and you're going to rake the whole thing. But again, make sure you hold that knife flat. And as you pull out the fuzz, the coat starts to lay flat. Do you notice that a little bit? It just doesn't bubble as much. Let me show you the other side. It's a little more bumpy. Because what you're doing is you're closing up that coat by taking out that fuzz. Because the fuzz is what just sort of stands up like this. If you notice how it comes out of the coat, it comes out in like these little floral bunches when it comes off that knife. I mean, literally, that's just standing straight up doing this. So when you take that out, that harsh hair that's real hard is going to want to lay flat. But you got to rake the furnishings. A lot of us forget to do that. You have to rake the furnishings, especially if you have a younger dog. If you don't rake out the furnishings on a puppy, by the time that puppy turns 12 months, they're going to just die on their own. And undercoat, now harsh coat, when that hair sort of dies and just hangs in there, it stays its regular color. But undercoat, when it dies and still is hanging in there, it turns red. So like sometimes when you see that sort of burnt rust color in the dog's coat, it's just dead undercoat that needs to come out through by using a slicker or by using the rake or whatever tool. Sometimes some dogs, their undercoat just doesn't come out easily. I've groomed on some dogs where that undercoat's in there like glue, and I've had to go in there and literally pick out that red fuzz. But you'll see that if you have red fuzz, or if you have that red hue, wherever you have that red hue, if you rake and rake and rake, and you check the hair that's coming out, you'll say, ooh, that's that red stuff. And it's coming right out. Now again, if you have brindle dog, there's going to be a tendency to be red hue, but I think all of us at one point have seen like a burnt color to the hair. So you'll continue to do that. See, it comes out. You have to put a little bit of elbow grease, but not enough. But when you're pushing the knife against the skin flat, you don't catch it. So you can push in there, and what I'm doing is I'm not really pushing the points into the skin, but I'm sort of putting some elbow grease so that I'm just not getting the top layer. And if you feel like you're still not getting it, brush the coat up. Brush it up. Bad hair day. And come back again because you've refluffed it. And you can get a ton more. See, I wasn't